A man dubbed John Wayne by his manager. Gets off the horse, ties it up to the post, pulls out the gun, gets his finger on the trigger, and fires the bullet right down the middle.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Talk of the Trinity. And whilst I could run through all of our social media sites, I'm not going to, because if you want to find us, you can find us here, there and everywhere. A little nod to our special guest today. So we've got Baz, as per usual, Mr. Negative Baz. Are we going to moderate Baz still, I think? We've got Dave Martinez Dance Dave, who's our summer signing, but we have got an absolute legend on the show as well. This man played over 150 times in the claret and blue of Aston Villa. He signed for us from Bournemouth. He did have to leave eventually. He went to Tranmere, ironically. He lifted the League Cup with the Villa, and he also lifted the FA Trophy at Villa Park. Ladies, gentlemen, and villains, I give you Mr. Shaun Teale. Shaun, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome, Will. It's a pleasure.
We've never had a Villa player, past or present, on the show before, so I'm a bit starstruck.
Really?
Really, we haven't. I'm starstruck. Baz will be starstruck, and you probably won't hear a word from Dave because he gets starstruck by me and Baz. But we've got a few questions about your career and about your time at the Villa. I know I sent those through to you previously, so I don't want to pretend that they're off the topic, though some of Baz's might be. He's decided today that he's got a question or two for you, Shaun.
That's all right. Like I said before, it's I don't mind what I'm asked.
I've got one cream cracker coming up as well. I don't know if Will has signalled that, but anyway, I'll leave that.
No problem, Dave.
It's not about cream crackers. It's not about jammy dodgers or any other biscuits as well. It will be a Villa question. The first question I have for you is about becoming a professional footballer, because it's everybody's dream to be a professional footballer. You've lived the dreams of millions of people, especially those who worship the claret and blue of Aston Villa. How did it feel the first time you pulled on a football shirt as a professional footballer, and in particular, the first time you pulled on that Villa shirt?
Well, I mean, my very first club, obviously, as a professional, was Bournemouth. So moving across out of non-league to Bournemouth was a big thing in them days. It didn't happen to everybody. You know, you had to have shown something over a period of time for someone to take the gamble on you. So making my debut for Bournemouth was a big thing, really. You know, it's what I'd always wanted to do. I'd done my apprenticeship at Everton, got released, just 7 years in non-league, and then finally got that chance. So it was a huge thing. And then roll forward 2 years, obviously Villa came in 1991, came in for me. And if I was totally honest at the time, I don't think I realised how big Aston Villa was. It's one of them weird things that, you know, I'm at Bournemouth, which is, you know, a very small club as far as Premier League clubs go. But even then, as not a Premier League club, it was a small club. But I don't think you look beyond that. I mean, we'd go to different places. We'd go to Griffin Park at Brentford, of all places. And that was such a much bigger ground than Dean Court was at the time. And, you know, you don't really take anything on. You go, you play the game, you leave, you go. You know, you don't really take in the size of grounds. But obviously, the first day at training at Villa, which was again weird because it was at Cadbury's, it wasn't at Bodymore, because we were flying out to Germany later that day. So I literally signed and flew to Germany. So, you know, I didn't really get a view and a thought to Villa Park till possibly a week or so later, when I finally got to go to Villa Park. I think I went to meet the chairman, Doug Ellis, I probably went to see Ron in his office there for whatever. And you sort of pull up and you think, oh my word, this is big. And don't forget, we're talking about 91. We're not talking about the size of the ground now, because it looks so much more bigger now.
Yeah.
It was the old facade, the old brick facade where you went through into the Willie McGregor restaurant and that way. But it was huge, and it was such a shock, but in a nice way. It was the start of a new part of my life. So I was thoroughly looking forward to it. I'd done my pre-season out in Germany with the lads, so I knew all the lads. I'd been to Bodymore and got used to that. So now it was a case of getting used to Villa Park. And I think I went that day, and then I think the next time I went was Paul Birch's testimonial, in which was my first full game at Villa Park. That was an eye-opener, walking out into Villa Park for Birch's testimonial, because there was a decent crowd there, because we played Wolves on the night. So there was a decent crowd and there was a decent amount of noise. So it was good, because it gave me a view of what I needed to get used to.
I suppose with that and that helping get that view of what you got used to, and you mentioned before that you had 7 years in non-league, which is a very high standard as well, isn't it, for any footballer still? How did you know that Bournemouth were interested, or did that come out of the blue? Were you planning ahead, thinking I'm going to be a professional footballer in a week or two, or was it sort of like,
No, it was. I signed from Northwich to Weymouth for what then was quite a lot of money for a non-league player, 25 grand, and shipped the family from up north near Preston all the way down to Weymouth, and that was like the first step on going to a bigger club. They had a brand new stadium. We were given a clubhouse to live in, of which we didn't even pay rent on it. We just lived. We were given it to live in, and that would never have happened up north in them days. In the sort of early to mid 80s, it wouldn't have happened. And then first season we had a really good season. The only downside was, because it was a brand new stadium, they hadn't done the drains right and the pitch flooded. So we ended up playing 9 away games on the bounce, and that probably cost us the title. Barnet won the title that year. And then the second season, it all sort of fell away a bit. We struggled. And I think Stuart Morgan, the manager, was coming under more pressure. And he just said to me, I had a meeting with him actually in the pub around the corner from where I was living. And he said, listen, if I were you, I wouldn't sign a new contract. I'm not going to be here. And I know that Harry Redknapp wants to sign you at Bournemouth. So say nothing, get yourself prepared, keep playing, and it'll happen quicker than you think. And true to his word, everything Stuart ever told me about going to Weymouth to become a pro, everything he told me about how the club was run was always spot on. So when he told me that Harry was going to come and sign me, I knew it was going to happen. There was nothing going to stop that. It was already a done deal. And funny enough, what happened was I moved, and within 5 or 6 days, Stuart resigned rather than get sacked, and went to work for Harry at Bournemouth, which didn't go down very well in Weymouth. We've all gone quiet.
Yep.
I think our Will has got starstruck there. Will, check your mic, for goodness sake. Okay.
The joys of tech. But whilst we go for the first technical issues, Shaun, obviously you mentioned in terms of Bournemouth, Harry Redknapp, Villa, Ron Atkinson. From an outside perspective, both have a reputation of being larger than life type characters, but not necessarily like Pep Guardiola standard on tactical detail. Working with them both, did you find them similar type managers, or were they completely different to how they're perhaps seen from the outside?
No, well, they were pretty similar in the sense that they were both on the training ground every day. So they were both, watching what was going on, going through different things they wanted us to do. So from a coaching point of view, they were very, very similar. I mean, it's changed a lot now. So whereas clubs all sort of train differently, in those days, you sort of, wherever you went, you sort of did the same thing. You do your shooting practices, you do your defending drills, you do your corner kicks, you do your five-a-side, and everywhere was more or less the same. I think that has changed quite dramatically now because obviously there's a lot more emphasis on the individual, i.e., fitness, the way he plays, the way the manager wants him to play. I think Unai is a prime example of that because, he has a very, very certain way of playing. And he has to drill that in the players, and it's been drilled in over nearly 3 seasons now, and you can see where it comes together because we play quite different from a lot of teams. But they were Harry and Ron were quite the same, very, very full of themselves, very chirpy. Both had big egos. Both wanted to be in total control of the dressing room, so didn't really like it if anybody spoke out in the dressing room against them or against what they were saying. Not to say it didn't happen, because it did happen. But yeah, they were pretty much the same.
And saying in terms of when you joined Villa as a bit of a surprise, in terms of hadn't been long term on the cards. Somewhere in terms of, were you away on holiday and then there was a delay coming back, and when you got back, your agent told you? So do you think if your plane had been delayed for a week, you might have ended up at Real Madrid or Barcelona in terms of going up the rankings from Bournemouth to Villa? But on a slightly more serious question, everybody, and we will as well, everybody talks about 92, 93 from a Villa perspective. But in 91, 92, when Ron Atkinson had just joined, as we mentioned, a lot of other players joined Villa as well as part of the cohort you did, and during the course of the season. Even at that stage, with a lot of seasoned professionals coming as well, did you feel the Villa was a club on the up at that stage? And later success didn't come as a surprise, or was it still a surprise about how far that Villa team went?
I mean, if you listen to managers nowadays or coaches nowadays, they always go on about, well, if you have too many signings all at once, it takes too long to gel, blah blah. It didn't really take us that long to gel. We sort of, I think was there 8, almost right off the bat. There was 8 signings, I think, and most of us played straight. We were straight in the team and played. Myself, Kev Richardson, Steve Staunton, Earl Barrett. Les Seeley to a point, although Les was on the bench early on in his career at Villa. Dalian, Cyril, and the team was really formed around that. We obviously had Paul McGrath already there. We had Sid Chalmers was already there, but they were the few and far between. It was mainly the signings that had just come in, the 8 signings plus whoever got in the team and subs. So I don't think when you sign for a club like Villa, straight off the bat from a place like Bournemouth, you ever really know how it's going to go. You never really know, are we going to be with so many signings, are we going to be a success straight off the bat? So I think we did okay in the first season, without setting the place alight, but it was a bedding in time for all the players, for Ron himself, of course, because he'd only just joined, to be fair. And then, obviously, second season we kicked on. With a couple more additions as well, we became a stronger side and looked a real threat. And at the end of the day, 92 is one of those seasons that, when people ask, do you ever have any regrets? And that's probably the one regret, that we didn't go on and win the Premier League like we should have, because I think we were 7 points clear at one stage and ended up losing it by 10, which is quite a swing in points, to be honest.
You've mentioned the Irish lads there, so I might as well come in. Look, I have to say it. What was it like playing centre half with Paul McGrath? I mean, we've heard stories that he didn't train and he just turned on the day. I mean, were you guys presumably aware of all this that was going on?
Oh yeah, I mean, Paul Paul. The only time Paul trained was Paul might come out. He might come out and do 15 minutes in a five-a-side on a Friday, day before the game, just to get his legs moving. But to be fair, the rest of the time he was always there, and he was in the gym, and he was working with Jim Walker, on the bike, doing knee strengthening exercises, things like that. Paul was just easy to play with because you always knew what you were going to get off Paul. You could always depend on him to do what he was there to do, and it was never really an issue. It always makes me laugh because he once said that with me and him as a partnership, I was the legs and he was the brains, which to be quite honest, I find quite worrying. But there you go.
And he also, I noticed, like Paul, I'm not saying he was perfect, but he did get up and score a few goals. I mean, did you have an agreement? You'd go up for this and or go up for that one, or was it always just Paul getting forward and you covering back? And I suppose then, do you wish you could, you'd maybe got forward a bit more and scored? No,
it was. I mean, Ron liked us both to go up for corners.
Yeah,
he preferred us both to go. There was times when maybe someone had took a knock and just it was easy back, or but for the most time we both went up. We didn't score many between us, I must admit. I mean, I got 5 in my 4 years there, so Paul maybe got a few more than that, but not that many more.
not many, no.
And there was in fact just one game that we both scored in, which was Middlesbrough at Villa Park in the 5-1 victory. And we both managed to score, and that was the only game we both scored in.
Yeah,
I know.
But it was that run. I mean, that, and you could even say the League Cup triumph. That kind of was built on you guys at the back as well.
Yes, yeah. I mean, as a back four, we were probably as strong as any other back four. Probably on a par with the United back four of them days. So Steve Staunton at left back, Earl Barrett at right back, and me and Paul. And it really didn't change unless there was injuries or illness or suspensions. If those four if us four were fit, then it was more or less nailed on that we'd be picked every week. It was also a time where, it's not like today where you've got 25-man squads. It was 11 on the pitch plus 3, and then it went to plus 5 with 3 subs. And the one thing you didn't do in them days is you didn't complain that you were injured, because if you moaned you were injured and you lost your place, the chances are you might not get back in. So nobody really admitted to injuries unless it was so obvious or it happened in the game and somebody saw it. I played with loads and loads. I played with a double hernia for 6 months. I could barely get out the car at training, but then I'd just bite my lip, get out, train, get back in the car, peel myself out the car at home and go and lie down.
Wow.
In that back four that you talk about, with McGrath, with Barrett, with Staunton, and how it was up there rivaling Manchester United at the time, that would have been a hard back four for any attacker to play against, especially with the legs and the brain to compete with. Is it too easy to suggest that the likes of Sheringham, Shearer and Cole would have been your hardest opponents, or were there others that spring to mind where you used to think, oh God, not on Saturday, I don't have to face him, I've got a double hernia? Yeah,
Ian Wright was one for me. Wright was a real pain in the backside. So he was cute in the way he behaved, because he'd let you mark him, but all the time he'd be talking to you. So he'd be trying to get your concentration away from what was going on. And he'd talk and talk and talk. And if you got too in with it and speaking to him, by the time you'd realise the ball had gone over the top, and he was quick, right? He was really quick, and he'd be gone. And we all know what a good finisher he was. So, you always had to be really concentrated. And that, to be honest, that could have been any top flight player at the time forward. Like you said, Teddy Sheringham, Andy Cole, Alan Shearer especially, because the difference with Alan Shearer and the others that I've mentioned is Alan Shearer didn't mind giving you a clout. So if you clouted him, you were going to get clouted back. It was, or he'd clout you first, and you'd have to try and catch him back. because obviously the game was so different. It was so much more physical than it is nowadays. I mean, nowadays they fall over the shoelaces, don't they? They're forever on the floor. The one thing that we as ex-players, and we were talking about it yesterday at the game, we can't get used to is why is it all of a sudden that there's so many people get injured, but it's the feet, they get trodden on, they get stamped on, they get caught badly. I mean, the tackling in my day was 10 times as ferocious, and I don't remember many people whinging about having the foot stood on. So it just goes to show how the game has been diluted, I think.
No, I mean, you talk about the game yesterday, and in terms of the red card, example that I was given yesterday, wouldn't have been a red in your day. I wouldn't have thought.
No, not a chance. At best it would have been a yellow if you'd have even got that. You might have just got spoken to by the referee, and that's just the way the game's gone. Obviously we had I mean, there were foreigners in my day. Obviously, Klinsmann came over, and a few others were playing in the Premier League. But in the early Premier League, there was nowhere near enough as many. And if you look now, it's probably 80% of the Premier League players aren't English now. They're from all walks of life, all over the world.
No, so I think on the opening day of the Premier League, there was about 12 to 14 non-English players in that opening weekend. So as you say, yeah, certainly expanded a lot since then. Because in terms of that 92-93 season, yeah, that was my first game was the season before. But yeah, 92-93 was kind of my first full season supporting Villa. And what a great season that was. The only question I've ever, well, not the only question I've ever had, but any coverage from Sky or the BBC or other media people about that season is largely focused on that moment at Old Trafford when Ferguson and Kidd ran on the pitch after Bruce scored twice against Sheffield Wednesday in injury time, and that is seen as like the iconic moment. That's when it all shifted towards Man United.
Yeah.
In the Villa dressing room at that time, did that even really register that moment, or was it really, or did you know about it immediately and you're like, damn, this is really going to change now? Or has that just been overplayed since then because it's Fergie?
I think when we were in the dressing room after we'd finished, I don't think we knew. I don't think it had actually come out by that time. And I think as we left the dressing room after getting showered and whatever, I think then we learnt about it, because obviously there's in the old changing rooms up the steps and that there was always press men stood out there with the little microphones and the recorders strapped to them, and they'd do you on a recorder like an interview. So they'd always tell us what was going on. So yeah, I think as we left, we'd have realised that United had pulled it back from the brink and managed to win the game. Because the last we knew was that Sheffield Wednesday was still winning. And it was a blow, obviously, because you would have stretched it. I think we'd have stretched our lead that day. But it's all ifs and buts nowadays. So you don't know. Would that have stopped us winning it? Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
As a hypothetical, thinking back to them, because the achievement of getting second in the league, regardless of being top by some distance and then finishing second, is amazing. It's the best that any Villa team has ever done in the Premier League since its inception, and the best that any team for Villa has done since the early 80s. Looking at today's team and also the teams that we've had since then, if you could take 2 or 3 players from the Villa between then and now to help get you over the line and win the league, or try to, which 2 or 3 would you select for the squad or the team, and why them?
That is a question. Well, back 4, I wouldn't take any. Obviously, we just spoke about them.
You don't need them.
Midfield. No, midfield. I mean, it's difficult because the game's changed so much. I mean, we had the likes of obviously it was 4-4-2 as well, so that changes the whole view of it. So obviously we'd have Tony Daly on one side, Kev Richardson in the middle. It could be any one of Gary Parker, Ray Houghton, Andy Townsend. Trying to think who played down the other side. So if I was to pick one, probably at the moment I would probably say Youri Tielemans, simply because calmness on the ball and he can pick a pass. And fans of nowadays think Ollie's quick. Wait, if you hadn't seen Daly in play, you've never seen speed like it. And Tony Daly, to be fair. If Youri had been pulling the punches with Daly on the end of him, he'd have been away and free that many times in a game. It'd have been scary. And we had good midfield players. Andy Townsend, Andy was more combative than pick a pass type player. Gary Parker was the one really who could pick a pass, but Gary wasn't always in the team. That was some of the issue. Kev Richardson was captain, so Kevin was always in there. And Kevin did a captain's job. He kept it all together. Kevin was more the Kamara type player than Tielemans. So sat a bit deeper, picked people off as they tried to get through us. So Tielemans would definitely be one. And I suppose, the way it's gone over the last 12, 18 months, I suppose Morgan Rogers would be the other one. The funny thing is the demands on those two from their fellow players, I would imagine, will be a lot more than they are nowadays, because I sort of get the feeling that players don't dig each other out anymore, not like we used to. If you dropped a clanger in my day, did you know about it? And not for just the rest of that game, you'd know about it for the next 3 or 4 days, because they'd remind you every day. But that was the way it was. Like I say, everything's changed.
Yeah, game's gone nowadays, as my lad would say.
Well, I mean, from my point of view, the game is gone because you can't tackle. So, it's people ask me all the time at Villa Park, how long do you think you'd last in today's game? And I always say probably about 5 minutes, because I'd have kicked someone in the first and kicked someone in the fourth and been off in the fifth. But that's what it was about. You could. I mean, the thing now is you can win the ball, but if you follow through and catch somebody, it's a foul. Yeah. And unless you've got air brakes on, I don't know how you stop half the time. So, I'd much rather have played in my day where you can win the ball and smash the person after it. Much more fun.
And slow motion replays nowadays can always make things look a lot worse than perhaps they do kind of in the moment on the field.
The other big change nowadays, if I hope the lads allow me to go into this, is that social media is a thing now. Wasn't at the time, so presumably you could go out for a few drinks in Birmingham and not be worried that someone's going to spy out and film you and put them up everywhere, which is a pressure I think that modern day footballers might have. But this is going somewhere. I think there's a moment that, if we lived in a day of social media, might very well have gone viral nowadays. I don't even think I need to even tell you what I'm thinking of, Shaun. I think you know what I'm thinking about.
Oh, go on, because listen, I could talk about hundreds of them.
Hundreds of them. Okay. Whilst I, as a little kid, was pulling my hair out, what's his name? Alan Perry suddenly came out to break the tension. The man, dubbed John Wayne by his manager, gets off his horse, ties it up to the post, pulls out the gun, gets his finger on the trigger, relief, and fires the bullet right down the middle. And I got because that's, I think, what I collectively did at that point. That you would have been a sensation if that was nowadays, simply because of the commentator.
Yeah, but the weird thing is that Ron never ever said that.
Did he not?
No, I actually don't know where the commentator got that from or where he dreamt it up from. But Ron had never called me John Wayne, and I'd probably have said something to him if he had of. But yeah, I mean, it became sort of pretty iconic. Shaun Teale gets off his horse, ties it to the post, takes his gun out, takes a few steps back, and fires straight down the middle.
Yeah.
And it's like, and when I first heard it, I'm like, oh my word, what's all that about? What are you trying to do to me? But yeah, you're right. If we'd have had all the social media platforms now, it would have definitely gone viral, I think.
Yeah, and what I said, do you regret or you're happy you're not in that age where you could, like, everything that could be said, you presumably had private lives back then.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a drinker anyway, so with when we moved to Birmingham, the kids were still very young, so I was one of the good lads that sort of got in the car after training and went home. And there was certainly a group of lads that when they got Wednesdays off would always meet up, maybe play golf, and then go and drink the rest of the day and come in. I mean, some of the fumes that came into that dressing room on a Thursday morning were not pleasant. Let me tell you that. Yeah, there was a group, and don't get me wrong, there was times when we all Christmas dues and that we all went out and we all had a few bevies and that, but for the most part, no, you could live your life normal. I could go into Birmingham city centre with the wife, walk around, look in shops, nobody'd really bother you. Same. The funny thing that always used to happen is I lived in Warmley out by Sutton Coldfield, so we'd go to Asda to do the shopping on I don't know, whatever night it was, and you always got the people that would walk around and they'd look at what you were putting in your basket, and it always used to make me chuckle. So that I'd put things in that I wasn't buying just so they'd see them, just to wind people up. But for the most part, no, we lived pretty private lives. We could almost do what we wanted to a point. Would I want to do it the way they do it now? No, because you can't breathe now. But then you've got to look at it over the period that you're only giving that up for so many years of your life, because once your career's over, your career's over. But the difference is you're a very rich man when your career's over compared to when we finished. So, to give that normality of life up for a few years, I don't think it's a real problem with the money they're earning.
No. And I watched the highlights of the penalty again last night, and what I found most amazing is the commentary lines up perfectly with when you take the shot and score. It was almost as if he planned it, kind of in a
it's as if he knew you were going to score, and you'd said, "Oh, hang on, I'll do this just as you're about to knock it in." That's a brilliant point pass.
But I was talking about that.
I actually don't think I could have hit it any harder on the day.
No, but in terms of, you mentioned earlier, you didn't score too many for Villa, but of course that day was one of them, and that for first goal in the fight back. As I've said previously, you didn't play in the first leg, so you could say it was really because of you how we came back and won. But when that cross came in and that goal went in, the whole erupts. Kind of, what was that feeling like?
Just, I think, more one of surprise for one, because Rico wasn't supposed to take the free kick till I was further forward, and he took it early, which left me literally having to sprint into the box. And then it was one of those things. As I'm running in, I can see it's gonna the centre back's gonna miss it, so I knew I could get to it. It's just, would it hit me in the right place to go in the corner? Or would it just go straight down the middle and Eric Nixon save it? So one of shock, and then I think just pure elation. As I said, with not scoring many, to score one so important was and it's one of those things that's always spoken about when I'm at Villa Park. I remember the Tranmere game. I remember your goal. I remember this. And that's probably the most iconic game I played in, because everybody wants to talk about it. And still to this day, it's exactly the same. So yeah, elation.
Sorry. We're talking about it again. So sorry.
Sorry, it's all right. So obviously diving header. So I'm literally sat on the penalty spot after it's gone in the goal, and Daly and Tony Daly jumped on me. So that sort of flattened me, and then got up and celebrated and just ran back and got on, because of course we were still behind at that stage. We weren't even in the lead. So It was just a case of refocus. The euphoria in the ground was frightening. It was so noisy. And again, to this day, I still say that's the best atmosphere I've ever been involved in at Villa Park. Even going back to Champions League Bayern Munich game, I still don't think that atmosphere was as good as that day at Villa Park against Tranmere. So pretty iconic game to be part of, and to score in it was just fabulous. And then obviously it goes to the penalties, and we get to that point where Bozzy needs to save it or we're out. And Bozzy saves it, and we end up getting through, and then all the usuals come out. We were destined. It was written. It was written in the stars we were going to get there. Well, nothing's written in anything. It was just a case of we had to battle to the last minute to get through.
Yeah, was there a feeling of destiny when Tranmere had that one kick to win the game and then missed, or Bozzy saved? I guess it must have been a slightly different feeling on the halfway line at that time.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can do. It's not a case. We had missed a few in the. Rico missed yet again, but Rico always missed from the penalty spot. He did his best to remodel the North Stand on his own. And I think Hugo hit the crossbar. And who else missed? Somebody else missed, didn't they? So obviously Bozzy had to make saves, and luckily for us, he was such a good keeper, especially on penalties, that he saved 3 times, including the one that put us through. So, and then it was just nuts after that because the crowd just came straight on the pitch. I don't think it would have mattered what anybody said about don't go on the pitch. No. I think 40,000 people got on the pitch. Well, it felt like that anyway. I remember getting off somebody's shoulders near the tunnel and not having many clothes left on, which could have been quite embarrassing if it had gone any further.
It's one of my very first memories. I wouldn't say I was a Villa fan at the time. I wasn't. I was more interested in playing my wrestling figures. So I was very young, Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior and all that. But my mom and my granddad went to the Villa 50 years home and away, worked for the Villa as well. But she couldn't get to that game. Well, I remember it was on ITV, and I can remember as clear as day Dino scoring, you scoring as well, the Bosnich penalty save, the Tranmere hitting the post in the last minute of extra time as well.
Yeah.
And your face looking back at it is an absolute picture of a beacon of joy and hope. Is it true that in those circumstances where you've got to pull everything out of the bag to get a result, that the atmosphere around the crowd gives you that extra 10% and that lift? Or is that just something that players like to say to get the fans on side?
If I'm quite honest, certainly in my day, I think it's what players said to get the fans on side. Because to be quite honest, you don't hear an awful lot when you're on the pitch. I've been in the stadium and you can hear somebody shouting something to a certain player. But when you're on the pitch, you just zone that out. You don't really hear supporters shouting, especially even more so, I suppose, if the personal things. You tend not to want to hear them anyway. So, but it's like Wembley. A month later, 80 something thousand. Never heard a thing. Never heard a thing all day. Got on the pitch at Wembley and never heard a pin drop the whole day. All you can hear was the shouts from off the field. So, Paul McGrath talking to me or me shouting to Andy Town, but no, never heard a thing till the end. And then obviously it's like a massive eruption of noise then because you realise that you've won and your focus goes then onto the crowd. But your focus goes on to picking the trophy up and then going on the crowd. So, yeah, just it's weird unless you've been in that situation. It's weird to understand that you sort of close everything out and shut everything out.
I mean, to beat Man United at Wembley as well, who were the odds-on favourite or the bookies' favourites to do the treble, but little underdog Aston Villa come along and we're 2-1 up, and then Kanchelskis gets sent off for an absolutely brilliant save on the line. Let's be completely honest. He shouldn't have done it. Were you already feeling at that point, we've done this, we're going to win? Or was it a case of when he got sent off, oh, thank God for that, they've got one less player. If Dino scores, then it's definitely in the bag?
I think it was if I'm honest, I think it was a bit of both, because I think obviously we went 2 up, didn't we? Before they pulled one back. Mark Hughes got one back, but that was late on anyway. And I think really we'd been fairly comfortable all game to a point. You know, they'd put a bit of pressure on us later on, because obviously the 2 down need to get back in the game. But I think for the most part, considering we were playing United, we were fairly comfortable and we felt fairly comfortable. However, obviously remembering that our run up to the final, the way we were playing in the league was not great. So, you know, you're fully aware of, you know, if United get 1, they could get 2, they could get 3. It could be one of those games. So I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a great feeling when Andre handled the ball and got sent off, because it was a great feeling. but, you know, if he hadn't have handled it, Daly would have scored anyway. So, you know, either way, we were going to score, had the chance to score. And Dino very rarely missed penalties, so I think it was more of a gimme, you know. So I think by the time the referee blew and sent Andrei Kanchelskis off, I think we knew then that Dino would score and we'd end up winning.
Yeah. So a personal question in terms of the build up to that final. And say I grew up in Bourneville, so I was a stone's throw away from Cadbury's. And I know in terms of I was at the school over the road in the run up to the final when the Villa went and trained on the Cadbury's pitch, like in '57, and that's a big thing in Bourneville in terms of that's where Villa went to train when they won the cup, when they won the League Cup. Heard anecdotally that the standard of the pitch at Cadbury's wasn't very good at the time. Do you remember what the pitch was like when you trained on it?
You know what? No, I can't remember. Leading up to the final, the only thing different that I can get back in my head is going to Bisham Abbey, and we went on the Thursday instead of what would know, because the game was on the Sunday, which would normally be you'd go on the Saturday morning. But Ron had this theory that he'd get us down to into London to the Royal Lancaster Hotel with our wives, which was probably quite a unique thing then. We'd all go out for an Italian meal. Ron liked his Italian meal, so we'd all go out for an Italian. All players and wives would all go out for an Italian meal on Thursday night. Be allowed to relax, have a few drinks, few alcoholic drinks, you know, within moderation, obviously. And then the next day we were whisked off to Bisham Abbey, and the girls, the wives, stayed at the Royal Lancaster. And then obviously it was serious heads on then. So, and it's weird because although you've played the whole season, you're still looking at it as if thinking, I hope I'm picked. I hope I'm selected. I hope I'm in the team. You know, as it was the only chance I got to play at Wembley. So if I'd have missed that, I think I'd have been mortified. So we trained on the Friday, and then we trained on the Saturday as well. And Ron named the team after training on the Saturday, pulled players in individually and said, listen, either you're in or you're on the bench or you're not in the squad. Which for those that weren't in the squad, obviously must have been soul destroying. Funny enough, again, I was at the game yesterday and I was working with Steve Froggatt, and Froggy wasn't even in the squad. Yet he'd played the 6 games before the final. He played all 6 games, and he couldn't understand why he wasn't in the squad. And he went to see Ron shortly after. In fact, he played golf with Ron a few years later, and Ron said, well, I just had to do what I had to do. It was just, we wanted to win the game, and that was it. You know, I couldn't have any favouritism. I had to pick the team that I thought would win. Hence, Graham Fenton playing centre mid, which nobody read, nobody knew was coming. We didn't really know until the Saturday. We didn't really know that he was, because Fenny had been with us for weeks and weeks training anyway. So it didn't look any different to us. And then he threw that one in, played Dalian on the right, Tony on the left, Rico, Graham Fenton, and Andy Townsend as a midfield 3. And Dino up front on his own, which again was we'd never played that way. We'd never played with one up front at that stage. So it was all a bit odd. The only thing that didn't change was the back 4. Earl, Stan, me, and Paul. So that was the only thing that didn't change. It was as it was. But I'd say we were confident going in the game. We knew, the one thing we didn't want to do is go to Wembley and get embarrassed. So we sort of made sure that didn't happen, I suppose. And Ron was, the training sessions were not heavy training sessions got leading up to it, but they were all about information and making sure we didn't make mistakes that we'd made against them in the league. So, Ron got it right for a cup game. Problem is he couldn't get it right for a whole league season.
Yeah, I mean, that leads into what I was thinking after that. I mean, as you said, our form going in, because I had a lot of friends who are Man United fans. Premier League was growing in Ireland, huge interest in Man United. Roy Keane, had joined from Forest. What they were telling me, you've lost like 3 games in a row going in, you'll definitely lose this one. And we didn't, but after the final, I think we only won a couple of games the rest of the season. 94-95 got off to a pretty bad start, led to Ron leave, and eventually soon after that you went and joined up with was it John Aldridge at Tranmere Rovers. What was it? I mean, was the team, when we got that big win, was it beginning to just come to the end of its natural cycle of a good team together for about 3 years? What is it fair for me saying that the signs of the team unraveling were actually there, even though we got that big win against United?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I think we played on the Tuesday night, so we on the Wednesday night we played Everton at home on the Wednesday night, and it was the dullest 0-0 draw you could ever play in. It was horrendous. So we paraded the trophy and a big banner with thank you to the fans, and then it was such a come down, and then and you're right, we never really recovered, and then when you look at it, we get to the start of the next season. I had a big fallout with Ron in the summer. Hugo started in front of me. I was out the team. Rico left soon after that. I think there was quite a few movements within the team. People shipping out and different players coming in. I mean, Fash came in for one. But which was a very strange one at the best of times with Daly and Dino. So that did. I'm not sure. Had Dino gone or had one of those two gone when Fash came in?
I think they were both still there, but I think in terms of the
little did deals for them to go to Turkey, I think, at the end of that 95 season.
I'd say one of the outside perspectives in terms of 93 and 94, Villa win the League Cup. World Cup 94, which I'm sure Dave has many a story about, with Ireland being the only home nation there, England not, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales not there. Ron, co-commentator over for the World Cup coverage, and then that summer transfer, what you call now the transfer window, I know in terms of deadlines passed in, there was Fash was one of them who came in, Neil Lamptey, another one who came in. Was there a feeling in the squad that perhaps business didn't get done because Ron was off in America, or was that not really thought of at the time?
I'm not so sure there was a feeling within the squad that was the case. I think there was a feeling within the club that was the case. I think certainly the supporters thought that. The fans that I spoke to certainly thought that he was more interested in filling his pockets being out in America than he was actually, doing whatever deals needed to be done, strengthening the side, moving players on, because we still had a big squad, to be fair, and there was plenty of room for movement, and that was that was part of my problem, you see. So I needed an operation. I needed 2 operations actually. In that summer, and Ron had pulled me out of an England squad that were playing 3 games at Wembley. Kev Richardson was in the squad, Earl Barrett was in the squad, and I should have been in it, but Ron pulled me out without actually asking me about an injury I had. Just pulled me out and said I wasn't fit. But then we went to South Africa end of season tour, 3 games, and he took me and made me play in all 3 games, strapped me up and made me play, which was a bit sort of counterproductive. So on the way back, I sat with Ron and Jim Walker, and we went through my injuries. I needed my nose rebuilding because Bosnia broke it the day before the cup final, coming out punching balls and missing them and punching me. And I needed a double hernia. So it was all agreed on the plane coming back from South Africa. And of course, we land and Ron goes straight to America. So nothing said. I gets home. We already had our holidays booked, which, funny enough, we're in Florida. So off we go to Florida, and I bumped into Ron in Disney Marketplace one night, and he literally blanked me as if I wasn't even there, as if I didn't exist. And it was only later, after quite a few crosswords with each other and with Jim Barron, that it all came out that he expected me to get back from South Africa, go straight in, have my operations, and then go on holiday. Well, it's a bit difficult when you've already got them booked. Yeah. There's not much you can really do. And at that point, he dropped me and put Hugo in, and basically shifted the blame onto me. It was my fault that I wasn't in the team. So that was the end of me and Ron, really. I barely spoke to him after that. And I've never spoke to him since I left the Villa in 95.
No, and in terms of, as mentioned earlier, wasn't much longer left for Ron at Villa that season. I mean, there was quite a short turnaround between that and I'm sure another game of that era, which gets talked about by a lot of Villa fans, the home game against Inter Milan, winning on penalties, and then Ron going. It was only a matter of weeks, kind of months. Yeah. Was there a surprise within the team about how quickly it got to that high 1 month downhill?
No, I don't think so, because I think our form was pretty poor. And if you spoke to as I did, if you just spoke to the older lads in the team, and I wasn't one of the young ones by any form, but the Ray Houghtons, the Kevin Richardsons, the Dean Saunders, the players that had a history of being top players for a long period of time, they all thought it was nailed on, that if they didn't start winning games, he'd be out on his ear, because it was just the way it was going. You know, we'd won at Wembley, great, but things hadn't really improved. We'd done pre-season, but that was spasmodic because of Ron doing what Ron was doing in America. We started the next season, and it was just poor. We never got going, really, and it was weird because I'm sat in the dugout at some games because I'm a sub, and I'm just sat there thinking, well, actually, do I really want to get on? Because, you know, if we're losing games left, right, and centre, and I can't make a difference, then it's not going to do me any favours looking forward. And you're right, Ron got sacked in the November. And the biggest thing for me was, I was on the transfer list, and he'd asked ridiculous amounts of money. But the biggest thing for me was, I went to see Doug Ellis the night Ron got sacked, and the night he sacked Ron, to find out what my position was. And you know, Doug was good enough to inform me he knew who the manager would be. He wouldn't tell me it was Brian Little at the time, but he told me that the manager that was coming in wanted me to come off the transfer list and get back in the team. And that's exactly what happened. I think one of Brian's first games was going back to his former club, which was Leicester, and I was back in the side, and I played the rest of that season. So, you know, it's the highs and lows of being a footballer. You know, I had 3 years under Ron that were absolutely brilliant. Loved every minute of it. Felt like I'd really done what I was brought to do, and then through no fault of my own, really, come to an agreement with Ron to get operations, and then he goes back on it and basically called me a liar, which, you know, I knew what had been said if nobody else did, and just dumped because it didn't suit Ron's ego to keep me in the team. So, you know, it's like I said, the highs and lows of being a professional footballer.
And then you unfortunately left the Villa a little time after that, and you went to Tranmere Rovers. Was that a little bit awkward, being John Wayne walking into Tranmere Rovers, knowing that you were the person who'd stopped them from getting to the League Cup final?
Put it this way, it did come up. I left. I ended up leaving the Villa because I had a long conversation with my agent, with Brian, in that summer, in the summer of '95, the close season, and he was pretty sure by then that Chris Coleman was coming from Crystal Palace for what would have been a British record transfer fee for a defender, £3 million. And with that, he said, at the end of the day, if he comes, your game time will be limited. And knowing you as I know you now, and I hadn't known Brian long, obviously, he came in the November and we're talking about May time. He basically gave me the option: do I stay or do I go? What do I want to do? Because he'd been quite straight in telling me I could be sat in the stand for weeks on end, not even getting on the bench. Well, I was 32, I think, by then, and I'm thinking, I don't want to sit in a stand. What's the point? Where's my career going to go? I'm sat in the stand. Absolutely, I'm going to pick money up for doing nothing, and I never wanted to be one of them players. So when the Tranmere thing came in, Brian actually sort of kiboshed it before it started. But I said, no, I'll speak. I wanted to move. I didn't want to the season to start me be stuck there looking for a club. I wanted to be playing. So Johnny King was the manager at Tranmere when I signed, and I knew John. I'd known Johnny King a long time from my days as a kid, and spoke to Johnny, and it was a no-brainer for me because it was I'm born in Southport, so it was coming sort of back home as well. It was a chance to bring the kids back to Southport, and all them little things. Really, parents were here. Carol's parents were here, and to be quite honest, the deal that Villa would have offered me to stay, which was only going to be a 1-year deal, Tranmere offered me a 3-year deal on ridiculous money for that time, for 95, ridiculous money, to which I think they've paid for ever since. I'm still their record signing 30 years later, which is crazy when you think about it. And it's only the fact that I went there for 450 grand, which is, even in today's, it's not a lot of money, but they've never gone over that yet. So, the Tranmere thing came up, and I thought, yeah, why not? And then, as I said, I got there, and Tony Thomas is there, and Kenny Hines is there, and all the lads that I played against in the semi-final. And I knew quite a lot. I knew Eric Nixon. I knew a few of the lads anyway. But no, it was never an issue. I heard the funny stories about when they got back to Prenton Park and went in the bar for a drink and wrecked the bar in anger. They literally smashed the bar up. So, which I was finding quite funny being told these stories, but they all got fined for it, so they didn't find it funny. But there was a few snidey remarks, but you're going to get that when you move clubs and you've their biggest game in their history, and you stop them getting to Wembley. There's going to be a few snide remarks.
They're smashing the bar up. That's just a normal night out in Dublin, isn't it, Dave?
If you can afford it now. That's a bit of trivia. Tranmere Rovers records transfer. So I'll remember that. Speaking of trivia, Shaun, and this is it'll be my last question. This is my cream cracker. So 1995 may have seen the end of your time at Aston Villa, but you were very much part of the Aston Villa team on the Maryland Collection stickers in 1995, which I don't know where you guys are, but they were huge over here in Dublin. My school had to ban them because we kept on doing gushies where you'd get your swaps and you'd throw them all up in the air and then you'd grab all the other ones, So they were banned. So, Shaun, you were number 33 in the Maryland Collection. You can buy this online for, let's just have a look, £1.83 is the going rate if you want to buy number 33, Shaun Teale. And here's the thing, on the back of all these stickers, that you peel it off, there's a trivia question. So, the trivia question on the back of the Shaun Teale Premier League sticker is this, which I'm going to put to you now.
Go on.
How many England caps did Peter Shilton achieve during his long and distinguished career?
107.
Oh, okay. Will Baz? Oh, hang on, you've seen this, haven't you? I sent it on. Yeah, no, you're close. The correct answer is 125, and you're
I knew it
close.
was over 100. I knew
Yeah.
it was over the 100.
Yeah.
I just couldn't remember if it was just over or a bit more over. But fair play, 125 caps. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. Probably won't see
I
that.
got one.
happening
I
again.
got one England non-league cap.
They should have put that as a trivia question on the back.
Well, you probably hadn't
Yeah.
got. Had you got that yet in '95?
Yeah, because
Okay.
obviously once you become a pro, you can't play in the England non-league team.
Oh, okay.
So I got it when I was at Weymouth, and then that was my one and only appearance because I became a pro a few weeks later at Bournemouth and couldn't play again. So I do have an official England cap.
And you didn't miss much, at least you would have been part of that awful night in, in Norway or the Netherlands, and it's better off you were watching on the side, keeping warm at home, maybe.
I was better off going to South Africa to meet Mandela.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave's been really looking forward to asking that question. As soon as he found out you were coming on the show, he got straight onto Google, bought the thing, and then started WhatsApping me about it, going, "Is it okay if I ask this question?" Knock yourself out, Dave. Knock yourself out. But I've got one last question for you, because I appreciate the time that you've given to us. It's been a pleasure and a privilege listening to your stories and giving us a bit of an insight, more than we've ever had before, about what it's like to play for Aston Villa.
Yeah.
I would like, and I've done this with a few other guests, you to build the perfect Aston Villa player from different skill sets based from when you played for them up until the present day. So if I was to say to you, you can build an Aston Villa player and you choose somebody's right foot, whose right foot would you be picking?
I'd probably start with one of today's players, Youri Tielemans.
Youri Tielemans' right foot, left foot?
Sid Cowans.
Sid Cowans.
To be fair, I could have picked Sid for both because he was as good with either foot. So, but I'll give everyone else a chance. So yeah, Sid. Sid with his left foot.
You've got a midfielder already who can pass the ball like Youri Tielemans and Sid Cowans with either foot. You know you're onto a bit of a winner there. What about heading?
I'd have to go for Big Paul.
And tackling?
Ooh, well, you can't tackle nowadays, so it's gonna have to be. You know what? I'll say myself.
Well, known as a tough tackling defender, it's probably one of the best tacklers that you could have gone for there with that. I mean, having that mix of you and Paul McGrath over those two skills with the passing, this is PFA Player of the Year contender anyway. Football IQ?
If you put football in brains into it as well, I'd put someone like Ray Houghton, because Ray was such a clever person. Ray's knowledge of the game was unbelievable. He could tell you anything about anything. Ray was one of those players that if Ray spoke in the dressing room, everyone shut up and listened, because he knew he knew what he was talking about. Kev Richardson was a little bit like that as well, but Ray was more about the tactics, whereas Kev was more about on the pitch, the team. As a leader, Kevin was as good as I played under. Very quiet, very unassumable, but on the pitch ran the show. He was Ron's eyes and ears on the pitch. He ran the show.
I'll be completely honest. My two main memories, apart from the cross for your header of Kevin Richardson, are him scoring against the Blues on the way to lifting the League Cup, and also when he played for Coventry and he got sent off against the Villa at Villa Park, and he didn't realise that the referee had booked him for the second time until the crowd all started laughing, which I felt was a bit horrible. But that's one of my memories of him at Villa Park. What about the last two bits, which are probably just as relevant nowadays as they were back in the inception of the Premier League, dribbling and shooting. I mean, you've got a lot of people to pick from there with Atkinson and Rodgers and Grealish. Who would you go for?
Yeah, I mean, dribbling wise, I think I'd go for Jack. I think because Jack was just different from everybody else. I mean, you're right. I mean, you look at the goal Dalian scored at Wimbledon, you know, probably one of the best. And because it was 92, a lot of people have forgotten about those days. And, you know, for a lot of people, the Premier League started in 2000. So, you know, whenever they talk about centre-backs, very few of them talk about Paul McGrath. You know, very few. It's like we talk about Melberg and people like that. You know, weren't fit enough to lace Paul's boots. I'm sorry, but you know, and that's not being nasty. That's just I played with him. I know how good he was. Considering what. Go on.
Because they still one of the few defenders to win the PFA Player of the Year, especially in the last 30 years. So yeah. In terms of overlooked.
Yeah. And when you consider what he put his body through, you know, 70 operations at United, none at Villa. Obviously, his drinking habits that are folklore in Ireland, and they're probably folklore in Birmingham as well. So to have a career like he had, and again, like you just said, win the PFA Player of the Year, you know, he was better than most. And I've read these arguments just in recent weeks about, you know, the best centre backs. Virgil van Dijk, behave yourself. Virgil van Dijk was never better than Paul McGrath, and neither was John Terry. Was probably a better leader than Paul, as in running the team on the pitch. But Paul had pace. Paul had power. Paul was nasty on the pitch. He used to have a thing where he went for a header and he'd roar like a lion. And I used to be laughing. I couldn't stop laughing because you could literally see the centre forward's head go down into his shoulders as Paul went over the top of him and smashed the ball away. And it was just the funniest thing ever. But no, for me, Brett, to build a perfect player, you would as a winger. We'll go back to the original question. As a winger, I would have Jack. I can't remember what the last piece of the question was.
It was shooting, Shaun.
Shooting. Well, to be fair, I would probably go for Dalian. And I mean, I know I'm going mainly from my era, but it's easier because you're there on the pitch. I mean, if you look at some of the goals Dalian scored, Sheffield Wednesday away, blasted it into the top corner. I think Ipswich blasted it into the top corner. He could strike a ball, Dalian. I think probably as close to Dalian as I could say would be Christian Benteke, because he could finish as well. He was a good finisher. You know, and then you get the quirky one, Dino, with his shot against Ipswich from just inside his lob, as it was. And Dino scored some very, very good goals, but Dino was cute because Dino would always attack the near post, whereas Dalian was too lazy to get to the near post. So, but he would always go near post, and the Tranmere game, you know, near post, flick it in. Liverpool on his debut, near post, flick it in. And that was a big trademark of Dino's. And as a partnership, they were unbelievable that year.
When you and I appreciate this question wasn't past you before, and again, I appreciate your time. When you're in training and you're alongside Paul McGrath, who apparently is ranked the 13th best ever Premier League defender, which I think is ridiculous, and you're coming up against Dino and Dalian, did you used to look at each other and think, we're going to get the better of these, or we've got our work cut out today?
Well, no, because it was. I know what you're saying, but Paul never came out and trained, so we do attack and defense drills, and most of the time you wouldn't get Dalian and Dino together against you. It might be Yorkie and Dalian, or it might be Yorkie and Dino, or it might be Steve Froggatt with or Tony Daly. So it would be quite rare for them to. And Ron did that for a reason, because he wanted that bit of competition. So if we did a shooting drill and they were on the same side, they probably wouldn't even pass to each other because they'd want to score. So he put them on opposites, and it'd be like, let's see who gets the most goals, because then it's a competition and they try that bit harder in training. And and that's where Ron was good at things like that. He would make little competitions out of nothing with a view to getting a winning mentality. But you could have had Dalen, Dino, Benteke was a real good finisher. Juan Pablo Angel was a great finisher as well. So we've been lucky. We've had a lot of good finishers over that period of time. If I went further back, Gary Shaw, was a great finisher. Peter With, good finisher. You can go on and on, can't you?
We've definitely had some superstars, haven't we? In
Oh,
our
yeah.
time at the Villa, and hopefully, with Tammy Abraham coming back, we'll see him scoring the goals again. Ollie Watkins has been great over the last few years as well. He always has a bit of a barren spell, and then you realise that he scored 11 in 13. So we've still got those 13 games left this season.
I think Ollie's a strange one because he's not. I don't think he's a natural finisher anyway. He snatches at a lot of things, but you can't knock it because his work rate is unbelievable in games. It's non-stop perpetual motion for most games. However, this season I think he's dropped off slightly because I don't think he's making as many runs, which gives us less options, which makes it more difficult. Tammy, I thought Tammy did quite well yesterday. I thought, once he got into the game, started holding the ball up. And the whole goal thing is what it is. Yes, I think the ball was out, but should VAR go all that way back? No, I don't think so. And it's swings and roundabouts, I suppose, isn't it? Hopefully we'll get a decision somewhere before the end of the season that gives us a precious 3 points that we need, and all the moaning stops then.
Nobody can talk about the Sheffield United incident anymore now, can they? With the ball and being over the line. And I don't know whether I'm fortunate or unfortunate that I didn't see the game yesterday, but ironically, I was coaching Cadbury Athletic under 15s. I won't go into the score. I wouldn't get the Villa job on the back of it. But Shaun, it's been, as I say, it's been an absolute pleasure having this hour, just over an hour, with you, talking to you about your time at Aston Villa, the other parts of your career as well. And just getting that insight. I mean, you're an absolute legend. Thank you for your time here. Hopefully, if we can lift the European Cup or the FA Cup or even the Premier League come the end of the season, we'll invite you back on, but we'll hold it in the pub and we'll have a couple of drinks in front of Unai Emery's statue that will be put up outside the front of Villa Park. But
sounds like a plan.
We're going to end the episode now, then we're going to let Shaun put his pistols back in his pockets, grab his horse and jump on and ride off into the sunset. Follow us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram. We'll tag Shaun into our Twitter handle as well. But until next time, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.
Thank you, Shaun. Up the Villa.
Cheers, Dave.